All right, just to stretch the conversation, incidentally, the world is commemorating the Day of Social Justice, and the theme really is renewed commitment to social development and social justice, essentially reminding that development must be people-centered and justice-driven. So whether we're talking about housing, infrastructure, education, the people must be at the center. There must be justice, not just profit. And to just push this further, we're joined by social mobilization specialist, Actionaid Nigeria, Newton Osemaye, joining us from our Abuja studio. Welcome to the program, Mr. Osemaye. I imagine you followed the conversation on housing. For you, does this tie into what social justice should be, particularly in the context of Nigeria?
Yeah, very well. I listened to the conversation. I followed it very carefully, and thanks to your guest there, I think he has been able to do justice to the conversation, starting from the beginning. Yeah, it connects all around. It's not just all about housing alone. It's about health, it's about education, it's about transportation, it's about welfare for the people of a particular country. Where we find ourselves at times, it's difficult to actually argue forever, because our constitution has actually provided for this, and the Nigerian government has also ratified international covenants that should ordinarily provide for this kind of things for people across the country. But unfortunately, like he also mentioned, there is no deliberate action of our government to actually implement even our constitutions, or not to talk of the international covenant they're signing to. So that's just where we are. The other countries have moved on, but we are still here struggling, discussing how to get houses for our people, how to get roads, how to get education, and all that for our people. So that's it's unfortunate.
So what must we do? Commemorations like this come and go, and people just wait. It's a yearly thing. We'll move on from it. What must we do differently this time around? Incidentally, it's the build-up to yet another election. So all of these promises wouldn't be in short supply. There will be lots of promises made. But what can we begin to do differently to move from promises to reality now?
Well, the biggest weapon we have as citizens is to actually determine who becomes our leader in the country. But also that process is also skewed right now. If you remember the last election, the voter party was very high. I think 21% out of the total number of voters who actually registers in Nigeria. So we need to encourage people to rely on their voting power to be able to vote in or vote out every government that is not responding to their own plight, or that is not doing something that resonates with their welfare. So that is the power that we have. So we need to encourage citizens to go out and really cast their votes to determine who becomes their leader. That's one. Then two, even when the leaders emerge, we must deliberately also monitor what our leaders are doing and ensure that leaders' actions are consistent with what the Constitution says and consistent with what they've ratified or they've signed on to in the international with international covenants also. So these are some of the things we need to do currently. Citizens need to wake up and monitor our government in terms of what government are doing, and see that government match their rhetorics, their intentions with real actions that translate into the better welfare of people, of citizens in the country.
So let's stay with social justice. And my question will do with how you think you can propose to citizens on how they can hold government to account or demand what belongs to them. So if you look at Section 14 of the Constitution, two parts to it. First part has to do with the responsibility of government to the people, security and welfare. The other part talks about the sovereignty of the people, where government derives its power. Subsection 4 talks about when appointments are done due to federal character, you need to give the people a sense of belonging. So it's discretional for you to be able to look and know what to do based on the formulas being sought. If you go to Section 16, maybe sub 1B, you see the fact that no matter who voted for or against you, must look for a way to protect as many people as possible and serve the people based on equality. If you go to maybe 16.2 C and D, you see that the states, it's called the more like objective of state policy, where if wealth is found in the hands of a group of people, whatever that group is defined as, government must look for a way to redistribute that wealth for the welfare of others. I needed to cite all of these constitutional issues to say that in our constitution, the ground norm, the framers, even though we argue about the imperfections in the constitution, there's some level of protection for everyone. But how many people are really aware of these protection or guardrails provided by the constitution, and how can we help them to place demand on their leaders, local government, state government, federal government?
Well, it's very simple. I think a lot of persons are aware in Nigeria. They understand their basic rights, that government should be able to provide certain things for them. Because if you go to the communities, for instance, or you go to my village, my mother, she's not educated, but she can easily tell you that, oh, this is government responsibility to build roads. It is government responsibility to provide light. It is government responsibility to provide water. She understands it. That's the basics very well. But then the implementers or the drivers of the constitution, as it were, or the drivers of the policies, as it were, they've skewed it in a way that you find it difficult for people to cry out. For every time that you resist what government want to do, the only thing that government would do back is to tear gas people, to suppress the voice of the people, intimidate them, and do all kinds of use security, state security apparatus to intimidate people, violating their rights, even double victimizing them because of even in their situation that they find themselves. So I think people are aware enough, but we need to also continue to educate people on what their rights are. But again, the government should be deliberate, like I mentioned before, should be deliberate to implement what Constitution says, should be deliberate to implement what international convention says, should be deliberate to implement what their policies say. So it is no rocket science. For instance, if a government, I don't want to mention a particular government, you emerge as a ruling party, and you say, oh, your priority is to take care of people or lift people out of poverty per se, and that particular program is not properly funded. Of course, that program is already planned to fail. That is one. Then the second one, that even when it is funded, the people who have access to the fund cut away, mismanage the resources, and the resources don't get to the right people. That's also a danger in the way we implement our policies and the Constitution. Then the other third line to my conversation this morning is a lot of people are rich. For instance, let me quote, I think Oxfam report in 2023 says 1% of the wealth of a Nigerian, it doubles the 99% put together. The wealth of 99% put together, 1%. So that is a huge gap. That is inequality in our system. And when governments have those kind of data, it is enough for government to begin to use those data to plan and see how they can provide what is necessary to bridge the gap between the rich and the poor. As we stand, there's a huge gap. Of course, social justice is about bridging the gap, reducing the gap between the rich and the poor, the have and the have not. You know, that is what social justice is all about. It's about just, equitable, and inclusive society that we create for people where their human rights are not violated every day. Of course, what we have in Nigeria is that rights are constantly violated here in Nigeria, and there's no inclusive society, as it were. Policies are designed without the consent or without the input of the people. So that is the kind of condition we find ourselves here in Nigeria. But citizens must rise up and continue to demand for their fundamental human right from government, as it were, and also demand for government to fulfill its obligations as provided in the Constitution. So we are not going to keep quiet as citizens. We'll continue to cry out and ask government to do what the Constitution has actually provided for us to do.
You know, it's very interesting because, yeah, citizens have obligations to the state, right? And when they break the laws, the law takes its full course, right? But when government, those in power and authority, break their own end of the deal, there is really no consequences, not justiciable. And I think we must begin to get there, that we see it also as, well, government is breaking the law because it's not fulfilling its obligation towards me. So hopefully someday these things are justiciable such that people will say, well, I don't have social justice and I meant to have it as a citizen. But we have to thank you so much, Mr. Newton Osemai, social mobilization specialist, Actionaid Nigeria. These are issues that shall shape the conversation in the build-up to the next election. Thank you and wish you the very best.
Thank you.
We'll take a moment now, and when we return, we'll talk aviation. Stay with us.